Welcome to another exciting episode of Ready to Launch, a joint series between Riyadh, a Wilson Center podcast, and the Straight Up Startup, a Jordanian podcast hosted by Rajae Sahouri. I'm your co-host, Merissa Khurma, Director of the Middle East Program here at the Wilson Center. We're delighted to be hosting yet another key pillar of the Jordanian entrepreneurship ecosystem today, Deema Bibi, who is the CEO of INJAZ. INJAZ has established itself over the last 20 years as a leading solution provider linking the public, private, and civil society sectors to bridge the skills gap between the education system and the ever-changing needs of the labor market. In a country and in a region that suffers from a rather wide skills gap in the labor market. INJAZ also set up its own incubator, mySTARTUP, which is focused on supporting budding entrepreneurs, their projects, and their businesses. And to learn more about this incubator, we're going to hear from Abdullah al Ghwairi, a graduate from the University of Jordan in civil engineering, and currently the co-founder of an Edtech startup, Safi, which basically creates peer-to-peer an online community to share educational materials. So welcome, Deema and Abdullah. Ahlan wa sahlan.
Thank you, Merissa. Very happy to be with you.
Thank you, Merissa.
So Deema, I'm going to start with you first and basically ask you to tell us about how you see the Jordanian ecosystem from INJAZ's standpoint. What are some of the challenges that the ecosystem still faces, and how is INJAZ part of the solution?
Thank you for the question, Merissa. So, several elements affect the entrepreneurship landscape of any country, including Jordan. Important elements include the legal framework, the education system, what's happening post-education in terms of spaces and programs that encourage entrepreneurship and enable it. The support services, including incubation and acceleration services. Also, access to finance is a major element. Access to markets is another one. The technology and the infrastructure, the culture, also the R&D, investment in R&D and entrepreneurship. These are all important elements. If we look at the Jordanian ecosystem, I would say most of these elements, especially the past 10 or more like 5 years in specific, have been really enhancing and reforming and advancing. If we're talking about education, we've mainstreamed financial and entrepreneurship education in schools. In regard to the legal framework, there has been a new reform and policy and roadmap taking place, developed by different stakeholders. If we look at the support services, there are almost every few months, there's a new incubator. Incubation and acceleration programs are themselves learning and developing. Access to finance is enhancing. There's an issue here, though, that we may talk about if there's time for that. Technology infrastructure, I do not think is a problem. I don't think they're a problem. And definitely the culture is becoming more appreciative and accepting and encouraging, actually, of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. So that's a quick summary of the ecosystem.
And that's really good news because it's taken a while to get here. And you at the helm of INJAZ have been doing quite a lot of work, particularly, as we mentioned earlier in the intro, in trying to close that skills gap, and now with this new incubator, mySTARTUP. So can you tell us a little bit more about INJAZ's programs and your success? I know you've also branched out outside the region, and that's testimony to the successful model that INJAZ has set up.
Sure, Marissa. So INJAZ started over 20 years ago. And since then, we've been focusing on bridging or narrowing the gap between the skills that the private sector requires and the skills that were acquired throughout the education system. And more specifically, the financial education, entrepreneurship education, life skills, and digital skills. And throughout the past 20 years, we have done many mistakes, and we have learned from our mistakes, and we have adapted, and we have changed our models, and we have understood what really works and what doesn't work within an ecosystem like Jordan's and a culture like the culture that is pretty much dominant today. To cut a very long story short, because we were able to prove impact, because our graduates had 3 times the opportunity of being immediately hired versus those who do not go through our programs, we were able to convince the government, to convince the financial sector that financial and entrepreneurship education are really impactful. And 7 years ago, we were able to mainstream along with the Ministry of Education and under really the leadership of the Central Bank of Jordan, we were able to mainstream entrepreneurship and financial education. So it became a compulsory subject from grade 7 to grade 10, and then elective for grades 11 and 12. So, and Merissa, those who started with us 7 years ago with the 7th grade, today have joined universities. And universities are seeing a real change in terms of the mindset, the knowledge, the business knowledge, the understanding, etc. So that is something that we have been preparing for a long time now. We've also launched several programs focusing on building entrepreneurship skills in all universities in Jordan. And as you mentioned, 4 years ago, we've launched our own incubator to continue with those young entrepreneurs who have the desire and the capacity and the will to pursue entrepreneurship and launch their businesses.
And it's just fascinating because, like you said, you start working, for example, with the financial literacy piece in the curriculum. You are not going to see the results right away because it takes a generation to change. And now you're starting to see these benefits, it's just testimony again that this work does not happen overnight. It's a long-term commitment. And I'm very excited that you're joined by Abdullah, who is currently incubating his startup. So Abdullah, I want to turn to you now. Very curious to hear about Safi. We've been actually at the Wilson Center's Middle East program, really zooming into the Edtech world. So why did you decide to start this? Tell us a little bit more about this entrepreneurial journey and your experience at mySTARTUP.
Thank you, Merissa. So as I'm graduated as a civil engineer, always people ask me the question, why are you going to Edtech? You are a civil engineer. But really, I understand the mission from being an engineer as a problem solver and to ensure quality of living. You can do it via multiple things. I choose education technology as a main thing because the impact and the effect, and it's not just a product that you can consume it. It's a very, very long-term effects. It can change people's lives radically. So that's why I joined and created several Edtech startups before Safi. Actually, from early beginning, I'm interested always in the Edtech. Regarding my journey in Safi, which is again, it's a peer-to-peer educational platform. We enable university students for sharing educational material. like notebooks, summary, and etc. And alhamdulillah, now we have more than 41,000 university students from Jordanian, and working to expand to Saudis right now, and in the market research phase. So
Wow,
the journey.
that's very exciting.
Thank you. So main journey, I can tell it's embedded with a huge challenge, but it's come with the job as an entrepreneur. By definition, you are creating positive destruction for an old system to create a new effective system. But you always will face that challenge. If you are not if there is no pushing back, you are not in the right way. But I can tell that every challenge we face, actually, we can find some tactics to outmaneuver it and overcome it, actually. But I want to tackle two main challenges, which is access to finance and access to market. And specifically access to market. Why? Here in Jordan, we are considered relatively very small town.
Small market,
yeah. So mainly most of the startups and entrepreneurs here in Jordan actually piloting their startups here and looking forward to increase or to expand it and scale it into the MENA region. So this is the main challenge now, to access other markets, like in the GCC, for example, or in North Africa, for example. This is the main challenge. Most of the startups, even after they build their MVP, they prove the business model they came up with. Now they are facing, when they talk to investors, okay, what is the total time you are looking for? Okay, do you prove it elsewhere? Are you working on it there? So this is the main challenge from my side, actually. I keep facing when talking with investors.
So how is mySTARTUP providing the support you need as an incubator?
Perfect. So from my background as a civil engineer, I didn't study technology, neither educational system. So I need knowledge. Even I have the willingness and ability, I need to assess it with knowledge to gain then experience. And in INJAZ mainly, we have assessments for our needs. Then they tailor it to personalized learning path targeted only for Edtech startups, actually, which is the main thing in the training part. The other thing, which is focused consultation, targeted the deep need that we are looking for based on technology or education itself.
Mm-hmm. And so basically, your training at INJAZ gave you the skills you needed in order to lift up your ideas and put it all into Safi.
Yep, 100%. And it's the point that you don't know what you don't know. So you always need some people to mentor you with 10 times better than you with experience, to add the knowledge in your conscious so you can see further, so you can strategize more and plan better for long term. It's not just building a startup, building a company and to sustain it in the long term. Build it right to sustain for 20, 30, 40 years for next generation. This is the real change. This is the real game of business, the real game of entrepreneurial and startups. So you have to build it right from the beginning, and you need those people who mentor you and allow you to see further.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's fascinating that you have had this experience, and you mentioned that you've had other projects before you actually started Safi in Edtech as well. And so that gets me back to, what is the problem you're trying to solve with Safi?
Main thing, access to educational material to support university students. Because the university student context and the environment they are learning in is changing. Now, you are not just a student. You want to work, to finance yourself. You don't have the time. Side by side, you need something to accelerate your progress. You have multiple books you have to study from, multiple syllabus, multiple slides that professors give to you, and you have 3 months side by side. You have part-time job. How you can do it and how you can accelerate that learning process for you and ensure a very solid foundation, at least a knowledge. Because unfortunately, even the students who graduate from university, some students, they don't have the experience, okay, but also unfortunately, some students, they are graduate with non-solid foundation of knowledge. So they must acquire a very solid foundation from the knowledge in order to build on it and a good experience to go with the career path. And this is one of the challenges that faces the employers actually, because the students who graduated, they don't know why they take this major, for example, and they don't know their ability. They didn't assess it well. Side by side, they are facing a huge knowledge gaps in the process. So they are graduated and facing the employer who want to deal with all of that. So in Safi, we accelerate the process of learning and ensuring minimizing the knowledge gap you gain in the university.
I mean, it sounds like beyond just sharing educational material, and with that, of course, preparing students for, post-graduation, you are in a way filling the gap of also a career service, or a career counseling service, which I know is a missing factor for many educational institutions in Jordan and the region. When you said some people don't know why they chose the major that they chose, that is very common problem. And so do you see yourself as also addressing that issue?
Currently, I'm focusing on knowledge gap. Hopefully, in the future, all doors are open. In average, I do user interviews daily with the students with different universities, so I can tackle and I can see the problem here. So and the value of it, and it's the impact that will make if we do it right. We are focusing now on knowledge gap. Hopefully, in the future we can. Yeah.
Excellent. Deema, I want to bring you into the conversation because there were various points that Abdullah mentioned that got me thinking. How does Deema feel, hearing one of, your own startup founders talking about their project and what they're doing? I'm sure you've seen, I know that you've opened up your application process for the 4th batch, so you've probably seen, at least 3 batches. So how does this feel from your end? And then the next sort of more technical question is, what happens to these startups after they leave incubation phase? Do you keep in touch? Is there a network?
I feel great to start with. It feels so good when you see a return on the investment, and the investment here is really 21 years of hard work to try to enable young entrepreneurs who have ideas and have the need because of the very high unemployment rates in Jordan, as you know, and have the desire, but really don't have enough tools, don't have the spaces, don't have the knowledge, don't have the support. Seeing them materialize and bring their dreams into reality is just amazing. Especially, Merissa, that our incubator is probably the among the few, if not the only incubator that starts with fresh graduates and students from the very early stages of launching their startups, from the idea stage and very early stage. These are usually young entrepreneurs who are not quote unquote investor ready, and there's not much attention given to such group. And this also includes not only early stage entrepreneurs, but also we find issues facing women entrepreneurs that is also unique in many ways. We find issues facing social entrepreneurs. There's very little impact investors and impact investment. There's very little space where they can develop their ideas and passion and really create change through launching their social enterprises. We see issue when it comes to people with disabilities who want to also launch their businesses. We see issues with young people outside Amman in rural areas. We see issues with people who don't necessarily speak good English. There's not much attention given to them. So we've decided early on, after identifying all these gaps, we've decided early on that we're not there to become yet another incubator or accelerator. We want to really address these gaps. We want to focus on women entrepreneurship. We want to focus on youth outside Amman. We want to focus on early stage startups, people with disabilities, etc. And this has been a harder mission. It is not the easy way of providing incubation programs and attracting investors and attracting funds and providing all the services and the facilities that an incubator would want. It's a harder job, but seeing the impact and the huge change from the day those entrepreneurs and potential and aspiring entrepreneurs join and when they graduate is really heartwarming. And to address your second point, Merissa, so we have every cohort we incubate around 60 to 70 early stage startups and idea stage startups. And among those, I would say around 20% are the ones who really start shining. Probably around 60 to 70% are committed. They go through the whole process. They want to make it, but they're not ready by the end of the incubation. So we've launched a new program for retention, and this is to retain selected incubated startups whom we feel and know would need further support, but are very promising. And that program has been proven extremely powerful and impactful. And we're seeing today our retained startups really flourishing and winning the first and some of them second rounds of funding and winning regional and sometimes global competitions. And they started with us at a very, very early stage. So that's really very heartwarming, as I said, and just gives us constant energy to continue to do what we're doing.
Absolutely. And power to you and your team for not only continuing the journey, but as you said, you've proven to be a very adaptive organization. The fact that you've identified that, not everybody makes it, and those that don't still can get a second chance with further support and programming is a leading example of your adaptation and evolution as an organization. So I can go on and on with both of you, Deema and Abdullah, but I want to ask one last question. So Abdullah, from you, I'd like you to share what we call within this program the before you launch words of wisdom to budding entrepreneurs or recent graduates who are a little bit hesitant perhaps to move forward, join an incubator or apply for a spot in an incubator. What would you tell some of these young people from Jordan? And Deema, if there's one thing looking forward, you are sort of looking at to add on or to change in the way that mySTARTUP is working? What is that one thing that you would like to accomplish, let's say in the next year? So I'll start with you, Abdullah.
So from my side, I can tell that you have always to listen very carefully and listen well, and don't get in the false, let's say, confident that you think you know it all as a fresh graduate, for the fresh graduate mainly. Be humble and always listen, and always do a rapid, fast experimentation. Before you start any product, always you have to know your customer very, 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 very well. This is the main thing.
Thank you, Abdullah. Deema?
For us, Merissa, what we have plans for currently, and that is also out of a clear need, is to establish physical spaces, extensions to our incubator in governorates outside Amman, and we already started doing that. We actually partnered a few months back with Moody Ministry of Digital Economy and Entrepreneurship, and acquired 4 locations where we will be extending our services and programs to these spaces. So initially, we've been targeting young people from governorates, but it hasn't been an easy thing for them to go back and forth to Amman. What we did, especially during COVID, one of the good things that came out of COVID is that we established a virtual incubator. So we were able to better serve those young entrepreneurs in different locations. But the physical presence is different. The engagement with their peer entrepreneurs and the community building activities, what the impact that these activities provide when you're there physically, face-to-face, engaging with mentors face-to-face, learning from your peers, going through lots of discussions, and it's a different experience altogether. It's a different journey. So that's what we plan to do, and that's what we actually started doing. Hopefully, by the end of this year, we will have 4 other locations outside Amman functioning, providing all the services that today we offer through mySTARTUP.
Excellent. That sounds like, as you said, a much needed spaces to ensure that there's accessibility to everyone. So good luck with the rest of that. Thank you once again, Deema and Abdullah, for joining us. And we hope to continue the conversation and meet you in person in Amman this summer.
Same here. Thank you so much, Merissa. It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Merissa. Thank you.
This podcast is funded by a grant from the United States Department of State. The opinions, findings, and conclusions of this podcast are those of our guests and do not necessarily reflect those of the U.S. Department of State.